I wonder if you've ever been to a play or seen a TV show where an actor does something different. They do what's called breaking the fourth wall. Breaking the fourth wall means that while the make-believe world of the play or the show continues on in the background or up on stage, someone on the stage or screen turns and addresses the audience directly. So the fourth wall is that imaginary, invisible barrier separating the story that's being told from us, the observer. Now, normally actors just ignore the audience. They stay in their imaginary world on stage, right? And we're only observers sitting out in the real world. But it's a weird dynamic when you think about it, because they wouldn't be putting on a play or acting in front of a camera in the first place if we were not watching. They know we're there, but breaking the fourth wall tears down our illusion that they don't know. When an actor on stage acknowledges us and speaks to us like that, what happens? We are suddenly invited in. The illusion vanishes that there's a barrier at all between the world on stage and our world, so we're connected in a way that was there all along, but we pretended did not even exist. And sometimes breaking down that barrier can happen in literature. For instance, a character like Don Quixote can suddenly just start speaking to the reader. And it happens all the time in the Bible. It's just a fact that stories from the Gospels especially are not just interesting stories. They address you and me directly, connecting us across time and space to a much larger reality. So for instance, when Jesus tells his disciples about anything having to do with the church, we have to ask, what church is he talking about? Because during the lifetime of Jesus, no church as we know it even existed. He was speaking to the members of the early church and to every generation of the church that followed. So that means he was also speaking in the present tense to you and me, directly addressing us, the people who make up the church right now. He was breaking down that barrier of time and space that's really just an illusion. And he was reminding us of something tremendously important. Now, like a lot of you, I grew up in the church, and I think I always understood that the church is not a perfect institution that's made up of perfect people, because people are not perfect. We're all wounded in some ways, and we've all inflicted wounds on others, intentionally or not. In everything life throws at us, we can respond in self-giving ways that we believe are the best for others, but sometimes, even without realizing it, we can respond in ways that mostly serve our own needs. That's just human nature. And I don't think Jesus had any illusions about human nature. He knew that we all have heroic moments right alongside those moments that we'd just rather not discuss. Most importantly, he also knew that in spite of our humanness, we can accomplish a whole lot more together than we ever can on our own. And the thing we're supposed to accomplish together in life is very, very simple. Sharing the good news that God is love and love is God. And that anyone can wake up to that reality and live in that love in spite of our imperfect humanness and in the face of everything that life throws our way. So, to share that awesome message, his disciples were meant to function as a team, even in the midst of dealing with all their own personal stuff. So the church Jesus talked about was not a church building with a street address. The Greek word translated into English as church is ecclesia, which simply means a gathering of people, all kinds of people, brought together for the one purpose of sharing and living out that message. Making that happen requires cooperation, focus, and accountability to each other. And that's where Jesus turns to the audience. He breaks that fourth wall, and he says to you and me the immortal words, "Where two or three are gathered in my name, I am there among them." Now, very often I've heard that phrase spoken out loud just before someone was about to launch into a prayer at a church meeting where they were about to ask God for a really big favor or a blessing or a miracle. So I've had people ask me, well, does that mean that the Spirit or the presence of Jesus is not with me if I'm all by myself? I have to have 2 or 3 people around? No, that's not what it means. It's a direct reminder to you and me that when we're going about our business of living out the love of God, in order to work together as a team, there is accountability to one another and to that third person who's always with us, whether we know it or not. Now, I'm not saying that Jesus or God is always lurking around unseen and checking up on us and putting a black mark by our name when we cuss at the driver who just cut us off in traffic. Now, accountability is as simple as being intentional about checking in to make sure the thing we're about to do or we're about to say truly expresses that self-giving love we live within and that we're designed to share and make real. Last month, our new spirituality book club wrote a wonderful book by M. Scott Peck. It's called A World Waiting to be Born, Civility Rediscovered. And it's all about treating each other with civility, how we can nurture civility in the organizations we belong to, and how we can restore civility in a world that really needs a healthy dose of civility right now. And this month, by the way, our discussion group that meets on Zoom at 9 a.m. just before this service is also discussing concepts from that book. One of the key things Scott Peck writes about is a practice he developed for himself, spending a moment every day asking God, am I doing the right thing, the best thing, the most helpful and healing thing? Now, it's not as if he ever heard a voice from the sky answering yes or no, Scott, but that personal practice of checking in and asking that question amounts to being accountable. He says that even though he's a Christian and he directed that question to God, it actually works no matter what you believe. That it's important to acknowledge with humility that you may not be right about something and to step outside your own self-interest to ask God or the universe, hey, is this the right thing to do? In any group of people, asking someone else that question, am I on the right track here? What do you think? That is a hallmark of civility. It's not just good manners. It's an admission that we're only human and we mess up and we might not always be on the right track and we need the input of other people to get stuff done. That's civility. That's accountability. That's treating others as we want to be treated. So when Jesus says, when 2 or 3 of you are gathered, I'm present with you, it's simply his way of saying, hello. After all, my love is the reason you're gathered together in the first place, so it'd be nice to check in and include me in the discussion. And this matters now more than ever, because while we might be part of a particular branch of the church, the ecclesia is a gathering that's far greater than any relatively small collection of people. Another concept Scott Peck writes about in A World Waiting to be Born is this notion that we're all part of the larger organization, if you want to call it that makes up all of humanity. He says that when he was in medical school and observed the cells of the human body under a microscope, he came to understand the interdependent nature of how all of our various parts work together. And he had this moment of awakening. He realized that if that was true within one individual body, then he himself was also connected and interdependent with others everywhere. That he had a responsibility and he needed accountability in order to function as a member of the human family. That his words and actions, our words and actions, matter on a grand scale. And understood that way, we can celebrate what makes us unique, while at the same time see the connective tissue that binds us all together. And I believe that connective tissue is God's love. Seeing things that way is to understand that when anyone suffers an injustice, for us to turn a blind eye or to claim that we're too far removed or not powerful enough to make a difference or to stay silent, that is a failure to live up to our responsibility to the health and well-being of the whole. It'd be like watching a play and pretending that the actors on stage are not real flesh and blood people. It's just an illusion to think that we're not connected and that what we do every day makes no difference to someone else, whether they live next door to us or on the other side of the planet. Our lives and destinies are bound up together. It's to understand other human beings not as objects, but as inherently valuable parts of who we are. You know, we never look at one of our hands and say, well, that's just a hand. I don't care if it gets injured or if it suffers from neglect. No, it's part of us. It's connected. On the immense scale of God's love, no one else is an object that we should not care for. Keep that in mind when we see people protesting for racial justice, when we see counter-protesters, when we see people we agree with and even those whose actions we could never condone. Keep it in mind when someone gets hurt or killed, when anyone is angry or afraid. It's not always easy or palatable for us to affirm it, but whether they're aware of it or not, every person is a beloved child of God. Every human is a member of God's great gathering, the ecclesia. And you and me, we're just part of the local chapter. And then we've been given the job of ensuring people are aware of the fact that they belong. And it's our calling to invite them to live in loving, peaceful, and justice-filled community. So, when we do our daily check-in of asking, am I on the right track? Am I doing the right thing, the best thing, the most helpful and healing thing? That's accountability to each other, and I do mean everyone in the human family, and to the God who knits us together, breaks down every barrier, and gathers all of us in.